dream since like baby. I've been joining forces with the likes of an A-team. Jumping off of buildings used to be so stimulating. Now I'm reaching new heights. I'ma need the off-whites. Play with the fire, you get burned. All of my struggles became lessons well learned. I got desires that keep me grounded, that's for sure. Cause one day we gon' make it out this earth. Where's your worth?
I'm sick of your talking, you got the wrong one. I'm taking your king and I leave him broken. If I am in second, it's after no one. Just give me a second to let them know. I'm the headline, the deadline. Big time. I'm ahead time, the rare kind. Big time. I'm a living legend, lethal weapon, master. Big time.
The king is back like prodigal. I gave him time, it's been too long. Was silent calm, but now the storm's right on. I'm not the one you can't ignore. I never line, the deadline.
Big time.
I'm ahead time, the rare kind.
Big time.
I'm a living legend, lethal weapon, master.
Big time.
Welcome to the show, Matty Marshall. Pretty excited for the season to begin here. 2025 Major League Paintball going to be starting off in Tampa, and that's going to be running up on us pretty quick here, March 7th through the 9th. Today, going to have Mike Jeffery on the show, former coach of Baltimore Revo, which is now Arsenal. Get his insight on his thoughts on that new squad, and also he's going to be helping us out doing some commentary this year, and he's also the editor of Great American Paintball. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, too. So without any further ado, let's bring Mike in, and we're going to be discussing the schedule. So key matchups. I mean, pretty much every matchup is a key matchup, but when I was going through the schedule and looking at the brackets, there's just some big potential moments out here. And this is the first event of the season. And we've had, if you've been checking out the shows and listening to Paintball podcasts, I mean, this year is kind of a new era in a way, as we've been kind of talking about and discussing, is there's just been so much change for a lot of these teams. So Mike, how you doing, bud?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Matty. Excited to get into these matchups.
Yeah, I do rock my I got a care package from Alex Frazier. So I had to rock the Great American Paintball. Let's actually talk about that a little bit before we jump into the schedule, the brackets, and discuss, the narratives that are going on here. Also, the layout just dropped as well, too, and it looks pretty fun. So I'm kind of excited to see how this one's going to play out. Jason Trozen's been crushing it with the layouts for the past couple seasons. So you guys are on issue 3 now, and people have been asking me, when's the next issue coming out and what's going to be in it? So you're the man to answer that question, since you are the editor of Great American Paintball.
Yeah, hard at work on it right now. Definitely timeline-wise running a little bit behind compared to where we were last year. So definitely won't be at Tampa, but got some great issues in the work, or great articles in the works from Archie Montemayor, Pat McKenna, and Sam Monville writing about stats in paintball. Really good one about Joe Barrett's journey in paintball and what it takes to make your paintball life, and a lot of cross-country journeys in his Mercury Sable. So we're really looking forward to it. It's a work in progress. It's a ton of work, and work that me, Philip, and Alex really take pride in and enjoy doing. So don't have a drop dead delivery date for you, but I can tell you that it is in the works, and it's going to be the best one yet.
Nice. Yeah. Can't wait. I'm going to be working up a piece for it, hopefully, too. We will see. But yeah, so let's talk about these brackets. We got Red Legion, Damage, Diesel, Aftermath, and the Sea Dogs in bracket A. So let's start there. We'll kind of just get your overall thoughts on them, and then, what you think was going to be the potential bracket of death, aka the hardest bracket. So typically when we do the brackets, always kind of ask guys, who do you think is going to make it out of this, and are we going to catch a wild card? Because the way it works, it's you got 4 brackets of 5, 20 total teams. You'll have for the top 2 go on, and then you'll have a wild card, 2 wild cards. And if you end up playing in that wild card round on Sunday, you have to win 4 games in a row in order to win the tournament, which is definitely been done in the past. So starting off here with Group A, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like Red Legion and Diesel coming out of this. I'd be surprised if Damage doesn't also. I thought at World Cup, Diesel really turned a corner. Obviously, that Paintball Fit match had its controversy. They were really derailed. They were up 2-0, about to go up 3-0 before it kind of all blew up on them on the Clint Johnson, Colt Gal, run bunkering, which will live on in infamy. But I thought the huge thing for Diesel was that Mark Johnson started coaching at World Cup, and he's listed as their coach for Tampa. Because I thought, despite the talent and the guys they brought in, it's a really difficult dynamic when you have an owner player. One guy is just going to be held to a different standard than everybody else. And that just makes it really tough. Paintball teams, especially at the pro division, with a lot of guys who have sacrificed a lot to be at that level, they're delicate. And how you balance them with new parts and people who have known each other a long time, people who haven't, it can be a difficult balance to strike. And I don't think it's a surprise that once Mark started coaching, and it's no knock on him as a player, I think it just allowed all of the remaining players on the roster to be working from equal footing, and they performed really well at that tournament. I thought they were going to win that tournament until it all blew up in their faces. I expect them to come out at Tampa with a huge chip on their shoulders. They have a lot of resources. I expect them to perform well here. Red Legion with that starting five, you just can't sleep on them. Series champions, right? Got to expect them to come out of there. Got to expect them to, welcome Royal City Sea Dogs into the league. Roughly, it's a difficult ask for a rookie team to beat the Russian Legion in their first tournament. Royal City Sea Dogs, I do like semi-pro teams coming up as rookies because they're used to winning. Royal City Sea Dogs coming off a World Cup victory in semi-pro. They're not used to missing Sundays. They're not used to finishing 12th place. They're used to being in the top four. So they're out of Canada. I don't know how much great paintball they've been able to get. I don't know if they've been able to travel for the layout, but it's going to be uphill climbing for him. But Paintball Fit really did change this conversation in terms of how we think about rookie teams and what their ceiling is out here.
Yeah, I think the Paintball Fit with their historic run at World Cup and how successful they were, you could, because some people are like, oh, they're not really a rookie team because they did play with AC Dallas before, but they had some newer guys on that squad, and I think that it's still, the story remains the same, though. It's incredibly difficult. There's, when you get to World Cup and you see all the banners surrounding the field, there's not a ton of names up there as far as teams that have actually won tournaments, particularly won World Cups. But you brought up, I think, a very crucial point. Being from Canada, how much paintball have they actually been able to play outdoors? Who knows, and that's kind of a big thing because Paintball Fit plays pretty much as much or more than anyone else. When I coach divisional teams, and I'm trying to, get guys to show up to practices and to put the time in required, the two names that I will say based on last year, as I was like, what are the two names that you guys remember as far as teams are concerned from 2024? And they typically say Paintball Fit because they won the World Cup, and then Red Legion because they won the series title by a mile, and they won 2 events and only lost to 4 teams all year long. Their plus minus was insane. It was like plus 77, which is just crazy. Points for and against. And after they say Red Legion and Paintball Fit, I'm like, all right, so what teams do you think play the most paintball in the pro leagues? No surprise. It's Red Legion and PB Fit. So yeah, we will see. We can kind of discuss the matchups, or we are going to discuss the matchups when we get into the schedule, but I think that's a good call. And also a note with Diesel too, is that Kyle Spica, we had him on the show. We also had Clinton Johnson on the show to kind of talk through their World Cup performance. And, another note about Diesel is that Spica has been helping Mark coach. So how much are we going to see him on the field? I think they still need him as a player, but as far as him helping, because it's tough to just have one singular coach that does all the heavy lifting, all the predictive analytics. I mean, that's very, very difficult. That's a really big ask. I mean, I want to pick your brain about coaching a little bit. When we get to Arsenal, that's all the way in Group D. So I'll kind of hit a pause on that question till we get there. But you have some experience in this. So, many hands make light work. I love that saying because it's true. And the fact that Spica is helping Mark, I think, was a force multiplier for that team. Mark, as the owner of the squad, taking over as coach, and then with Spica helping him as far as that is concerned. And I just think it's been very productive for them. How productive is it going to be? Continuing to secure the talents of Alex Goldman, who flirted with going to Edmonton Impact. So that made the offseason pretty wild. It was an insane, wild offseason. And then was chatting with Grayson today, Grayson Gladstone from Aftermath, and they had a big turnover. But he said they really like their guys. Are going to be going away from running 2 lines, which I thought was a bit of an Achilles heel for them last season. So there's a lot to it here. Let's jump over to Group B. We got X Factor, Fit, Energy Elite, Hurricanes, and the Tauntauns. What do you think?
Yeah, X Factor is the easy pick to come out of this along with Fit. Those two teams, I think if you drew 100 ballots and asked 100 people in paintball to pick which two teams, something like 98 of them would have those two teams coming out of it if they were being serious. The Hurricanes, it's going to be a huge question mark what that team looks like with without Mike Bianca. And I saw that right before we got on the show, they picked up a bunch of new guys. So that team is a big question mark now. Certainly they're talented, but it's going to be this question of how much of the Hurricanes' success as a relatively new pro team was the result of Mike Bianca, who is a unique coach. He's very hands-on. He really has a strong understanding of the geometry of paintball. He's probably one of the best motivators that's ever come through paintball. So it'll be interesting to see how the Hurricanes come out here. Energy Elite, now without the Brooklyn guys, formerly Brooklyn Bears over there, picked up Ethan Adams, formerly of Arsenal. They're a team that can make Sundays. They've done it in the past with some inconsistency, but they're a team that has parts that have played together for a really long time. Allen has a good setup down there in Virginia. They play a lot of paintball, I know. So you never know. And then the Tauntauns, I'm just curious how good Marky Franz's French is getting, because that roster is Frenchman, one Russian, and then Marky Franz. But it's exciting to think about Axel Gaudin and Konstantin Fedorov suiting up together. The Tauntauns are going to be a really tough team to play. That Euro style Russian, French, in your face, nonstop aggression, that can be a really difficult style to keep up with. Those guys want to play 15-point matches. So they want to get after it. If you're a team that wants to slow down a little bit, suddenly you find yourself in the deep water with a bigger fish that's swimming faster than you.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if the Tauntauns, so Red Legion, by far the fastest playing team in the league, which is pretty incredible considering they really only run those that starting five. Their points played versus everyone else is insane. But I think the Tauntauns might give Red Legion a run for their money as far as fastest playing teams in 2025. But I'm also wondering, are they going to adjust their style? You know, the Tauntauns did not have a good look at World Cup. It wasn't the look that they had the year previous. And looking at their roster, but then they added some more firepower. You know, they pick up Konstantin Fedorov, which is, I mean, Konstantin Fedorov is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer one day. That's no question. And then they get Axel Gaudin for the whole season this year instead of just having him, you know, basically come back to play with his boys for World Cup. He was with San Antonio X Factor. So that's going to be kind of interesting because they're in the same bracket. But a lot of people have been saying having the Tauntauns with the roster that they have, despite the underperformance at World Cup, with this new added firepower, that this makes Group B potentially the bracket of death, depending on how good Energy Elite is out the gate and how good the Hurricanes are. We know X Factor is going to be good. We know PB Fit is going to be good. I was talking to Colt Lukow, and he was, you know, talking about how much they've been training. I talked to Cyrus Geringer as well too. I mean, those guys have been playing 4 to 5 days a week, pretty much the whole off season. They've been playing, you know, fun 7-man events and playing, you know, they're just paintball guys that they live and breathe paintball. It helps to own a field. And then X Factor, I went to there was a 4-way super practice. We were trying out some new format stuff. And of the 4 teams that were there, I think X Factor probably looked the most polished, at least in the first, you know, one of the first practices of the year. Houston Heat, that was their first time with their new roster. Impact also a lot of change with bringing all their new guys on too. Impact actually looked pretty decent. Diesel was there as well. Diesel looked really good. They didn't have Mouse for that one. He was sick, went to the hospital that week. He's fine now, but couldn't make the practice. But X Factor looked pretty dialed already. So that's a really good sign for them, considering how consistent they were last year. So yeah, I don't know. Do you think this is the bracket of death, or do you think we got to look elsewhere?
Yeah, to me, it's going to be between Group B and Group D for sure. Those two are the ones I have circled. It kind of depends on your view of Arsenal, and I'm very bullish on them. So I could understand the argument for Group B, but I would call it Group D.
Yeah, and then let's hover on Energy Elite for a little bit because, you know, so like you said, Bears, this was the Bears essentially. So Allen taking over, Magic Mike riding off in the sunset, at least for now. but it's a completely different team than the Bears were last year. Other than the Buftons, there's no one on this team, I think, from the Bears and Evan Manners. But it's like you got they picked up Justin Politi, they picked up Damian Vasquez, they got Christian Woodmansee, Ethan Adams, like you said. So it's the jury's going to be out on this one. You know, it's like I've seen a lot of these guys play. I know they can play paintball well, but how quickly can that team find its cohesion as a unit at the first event? You know, playing having to try to scrap through to make a Sunday against, you know, in this bracket. It's going to be difficult. I mean, that's the question for a lot of these teams heading in. You know, when we get to Impact in Group C, I mean, obviously Impact's going to be a favorite to win any event they play in 2025. But how quickly is that all-star superstar roster going to be able to, you know, vibe together? It's tough to tell. I mean, Aftershocks, well, we'll get to that when we get to Group C. But I was going to point to Shock. I mean, if you look at Shock last year, they started out at the first event, and they weren't terrible, but they took a 15th, and then they got it together pretty quickly with the 4th, a 2nd, a 5th, and then an unfortunate 11th of them at World Cup. But that's always kind of the thing, right? Is that how quickly can you guys get that? You know, there's so many different ways to describe it. You call it the vibe or gelling or teamwork and cohesion, and how quickly can you get that together? That's a story that we're going to have to watch play out here with a decent amount of these teams this season. Let's head on over to Group C. So we got Impact. Sorry, unless you got something for me on Group B.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
in general,
for teams like Energy Elite, where they're kind of not favored to come out of this bracket, say, with all their new parts, what you're really looking to do is, like, you're trying to beat the Hurricanes and the Tauntauns and get in on margin, right? Like, that's really a realistic expectation for them. Of course, they should go out there and try to beat Paintball Fit. Of course, they should try to beat X Factor. Anything's possible out here. We see upsets all the time, but at the end of the day, they need to beat those two teams if they want to move on. That's really their best chance. Those are the games you got to have. Their first ones against the Tauntauns. And then that's really where you're looking to build from for a lot of these teams is can we make it to Sunday? Can we win the games we're supposed to win and upset a couple other teams and build from that, especially with a lot of new parts?
Yeah, and then also to touch on the Hurricanes real quick, looking at their roster that they're bringing to Tampa, they picked up Cato Warner, and he actually had some really good looks years ago for Elevation, I think it was. And, you know, he had some enough for me to remember his name, even though he wasn't around for a ton of time and was trying to find his home on a couple other squads. It just never quite worked out. But, you know, there was some talent there. So I think that's going to potentially add a little depth for them. But they have a lot of the same returning guys that really help them become a very consistent team. Again, like you said, no Mike Bianca, which is a pretty big deal. I saw him out here last weekend as the Dynasty had one of their first big practices. And then I asked him how it went, gave me a little bit of a rundown, and he's just having a good time, man. Really, really excited about Dynasty's new look. But they still have, Hurricanes still have Andrew Bell, Mike Brown, Daniel Camp, Aaron Pate, Stuart Ridgel, Nick Ripple will be returning as going to be trying to log in the most amount of miles this year, coming over from Germany. And then Ryan Williamson still as well, too. So the core is still there. It doesn't look like Seawright's going to be making it to the first event, and he was a big weapon for him in their second place finish at the first event last season when they lost that heartbreaker up by 3 points in the finals to San Diego Dynasty. So, yeah, I mean, we will see. So what do you think about Group C? Impact, Aftershock, Infamous, Uprising, and Leverage, the team that earned their way in last year.
Really interesting group. Yeah, really interesting group. Really looking forward to seeing. I mean, Impact, one thing that stuck out to me, obviously, they made the biggest splash this offseason, picking up Tyler Harmon, Marcelo Margot, Rainey Stanzek, and it looked like it was going to be Alex Goldman, but is not. But they do get Mikey Urena back because Mouse doesn't go there. They have 9 guys on that team. So I think it's going to be the first time in years that we don't see 2 lines from Impact in the prelims. I'm very curious about how Dave Baines is going to run that with 9. You can have one guy flip over, but that can get tricky pretty quickly, and they don't have the 10 for a solid 2-line system. I'm also really curious to see like how Marcelo Margot and Nick Laval mesh there. Matt Derula and Mike Zoop obviously retired. My sense from that team is that Nick Laval and had been there for so long, was sort of like kind of the alpha of the group. I think Marcelo, I imagine him leaving Dynasty coming into a new camp is sort of trying to uh, maybe play for an alpha role. And those guys are professionals. I don't mean to cast doubt that they can work together, but I'm interested in seeing like who's going to be the quarterback on Impact this year. You have such brilliance on that team. I don't think this is going to be an AC Diesel situation where they're missing Sundays often. I would not be surprised to see them win the first event. Yeah, very, very much looking forward to seeing that new Impact look. Aftershock, getting Trent Nitta back. He's his knee kept him out of World Cup. I thought he had some moments of real brilliance for them last year when he wasn't hurt. He had a couple injuries that kept him out of the AC final against the Legion and then out of World Cup. He's someone who I think has really matured and is a brilliant player, has the ability to do surprising things and connect on shots in motion in a way that's rare. Someone gave me bad information telling me that A-Rod and Thomas Kin were retiring. It seems like they're both back. Aftershock, a team that is just very dangerous. Infamous is a really interesting one to me because I think Trevor Reeser, now that he's sliding onto a team where he probably is going to be in the starting five more often, is going to have the opportunity to shine. He rode the bench a lot on Impact, but he's a really, really talented player. They also got Rob Velez and Zach Geiger. Infamous is one of those teams they've really underperformed last year. They can look like the best team out there. They also can struggle to close easy situations. They could be the best of the worst. They're going to be shooting great Voltanium paint. I know that for sure. Curious to see what we get out of Infamous this year. Uprising, I think the pickup of Nate Schroeder, whatever you thought about Uprising and circling them as like maybe one of your easy games, changed when Schroeder got there because they kind of found their quarterback in him, someone who can both be the gas pedal and shore up the defense. He played great for them, and they had 2 Sundays to end 2024. I think a large part because of him. That team's down to scrap. They'll play you fast. They'll play you slow. And Leverage, rookie team, but Chris Caputo had his year with the Bears in pro. Alfred De Los Santos on that team. He has pro experience going back to the Top Gun pro team and PSP. So those are a bunch of New Yorkers who, they're not going to kiss anyone's boots. They're going to be there to grind. They've won a lot of tournaments in D2 and semi-pro. So again, a team that's used to winning, I think that's big. I really do think like being in the habit of winning is something that gets beaten out of rookie teams. Usually was not the case with Paintball Fit last year. And I think a lot of these teams coming up will take Paintball Fit as an example. I'm actually heading down to New Jersey tomorrow to catch Leverage's practice, riding down with my boys from Preferred Mob. So curious to see what looks they're going to bring this layout on the practice weekend.
Yeah, this is shaping up to be a pretty tough bracket as well, too. I mean, we talked last year constantly about, when you're having that, okay, well, what is the most difficult bracket conversation, that a lot of them were very close. Obviously, you can make an argument for why one would be a little bit stronger than the other, and some were blatantly obvious. But, this is a tough one because Uprising did look so good towards the end of the year. Yeah, picking up Nasty Nate Schrader. Man, he was lights out for him. Mark was on fire in the Snake, became a gigantic threat that everyone was worried about. And then a lot of the guys they'd had for years, Grant Arnold, Bormeo, Eaton. And then I thought another big standout for him towards the end of the season when they started doing better was Alec Holland. That guy was super consistent. He was kind of like their Marcelo. He would stay alive. He'd win gunfights. He'd communicate. He'd pull off low body situations. Alec Holland was a giant asset for Uprising. So, if they look as good as they did towards the end of last season, it makes this bracket really tough because if Impact gets dialed early, which, like you said, I think they probably are, I think it's going to be sooner rather than later before they start looking amazing. The tough thing for them is, it's hard because when you have a team of that caliber with that much success and the players with that much pedigree as much winning as they've done, it's either win or it's a horrible situation for them. A second place finish is going to be a disaster for Edmonton Impact, and all the top teams that are used to winning kind of had that mentality. I mean, that's the mentality you want to have if you're those teams. I got a chance to talk to Zane Yakimek and Dave Baines at the practice 2 weekends ago and asked them that exact question. Hey, how are you going to handle playing time? And he said, well, depending on when we get Jarula or Zupa and how many bodies we have and obviously who's playing well, I mean, I think it's just going to be, keep what you kill situation. Got to ride the hot hand. both of them thought about it for a second, and they're like, yeah, it's going to be tough to figure out who our best guys are, but I think we really have no choice if we want to, we want to win tournaments. We put this team together to win tournaments. So when we get to Sunday, if you're playing the best, regardless of who it is, and we always would joke, when you have teams like this, you could just pick a dude, just pick 5 guys out of a hat, and you're probably going to have a pretty good tournament. And then with Chicago Aftershock, man, they're rolling deep. Shock has so many bodies. I think they're bringing 11 to this event. And I talked to Tom Martinez a little bit yesterday, and he was talking about, I was like, well, how did everyone look? He's like, everyone looked great. The new guys were crushing it, though. He was really excited about how well those new guys were playing. And, so we're talking about the Altimores, Nick Crishoni, and then, they get Nita back from his injury, and it took him a while to heal up. But they're rolling with 11, and then I was kind of asking with the pickup of Connor Kelly, how good was he playing? I guess he was lights out at the practice. So, it's going to be really competitive to see who plays the first attacker in the snake. That was Hosky's job last year, and he earned it over Clay Hughes. But Clay Hughes got a lot of talent too, and Connor Kelly could be that guy. So we will see potentially Hosky switch positions in 2025 and have him play a different role than being that first attacker in the snake. Regardless, Shock has tons of options, and that's going to be a similar situation that we just had now with Edmonton Impact. Todd Adamson and Todd Martinez are not building that team to take 4th places or, to make it to finals. They're building that team to win tournaments, to bring back that Shock name and make it legendary yet again with this new incarnation of the squad. So, but handling 11 dudes is tough. And then Infamous Patient does look like he will be at the first event. So, I don't know, man. If Leverage, to your point, and I'm glad you brought it up, talking about PB Fit. I mean, one of the reasons that PB Fit was able to excel towards the end of the year and end up winning World Cup is that team is used to winning. They went down and crushed everyone's souls down in the semi-pro division and won every single event. And so they got used to that feeling, and they got used to the mental tenacity needed to push through regardless, no matter what happens. And I remember, I've talked about this in a few shows before, but I remember seeing them in Chicago when they made their first Sunday. I was like, how you boys feeling? And they were just dagger eyes, so confident, more, confident, less cocky, but they had that chip on their shoulder required to be elite out here. And it was just a really good sign to see that intense focus and how pumped up they were to go to battle that day. And is Leverage will probably be bringing that same sort of intensity into the pro league. And they're also a team that has years of experience playing with each other. So I don't know, that could be the bracket of death too. Let's move over to Group D. We got Heat, Dynasty, Ironman, Arsenal. So again, for everyone out there listening, Arsenal was Revo last year, and they changed their name. I'm actually a fan of that name change because people, even still to this day, Revo had been around for a long time, short for Revolution. People would still call it Revo. So I'm glad that Arsenal is just a very strong name for a paintball team. Was a big fan of it back in the 7-man days. Pretty stoked that Tom Ford brought that back. And then we have New York Extreme, which is kind of a hybrid of New York Extreme last year and the ML Kings, led by Harris Hussein. What are your thoughts on this bracket?
It really interesting bracket for Heat, Dynasty, Ironman, Arsenal, NYX. Like a lot of teams this offseason, a ton of changes. Dynasty I'm really curious to see who's going to pick up the slack from Marcelo Margot. Are we going to see more Yosh Rao than we did last year? Is Joe Barrett going to slide right in as a new pickup? I think the biggest thing for Dynasty, I know Alex Frazier said this, the guys who didn't leave, like Harrison Fry, Arturo, Danny. People forget Danny from LVL. He was like the hot pickup of the 2024 offseason, and he really didn't play all that much last year for Dynasty. I think now he becomes really important. That guy can ball. I expect to see more of that this year. Really excited to see how Kyle Berry and Ryan Greenspan play together. Dynasty, those guys, and I've been feeling this way for years, have a psychological advantage because Ryan Greenspan can look downfield and know that he's looking at someone that he's about to play who had his poster on their wall when they were a child. And the guy is in perfect shape. He doesn't make mistakes out there. I talked to Joe Barrett. He's going to have a piece in Gap issue 3. We had a few long conversations, and he says the Dragon energy is just different. The way those guys talk to each other, the whole vibe in the team group chat, it's just a different thing. You actually you have like a real significant global fan base. There are real important confidence bringing elements to a structure where the pillars of it know how to win, expect to win, and are going to lift everyone up around them to the highest level of paintball player they can be. So Dynasty, I don't really worry about. I am curious to see how they respond to a coach like Mike Bianca, who I believe is the first coach they've ever had who wasn't either a former Dynasty guy or someone they grew up playing with. Because it's SK, Hinman, and Rusty, right? Those are all guys that they've known basically since they were children. Bianca is coming in there as a guy from New Orleans who kind of burst onto the scene as this new style coach. I have no doubt in Bianca's abilities, but it's going to be interesting to me to see how they navigate that in the hot moments, right? Like in the moment where it's one play call, does Greenspan get to take the marker away? Does Bianca, like, how much input does Bianca take there? Those moments are really, really complicated in terms of who has the coach's ear. Is the coach's ear even open? And that's the dynamic I'm most interested to see on Dynasty this year. The Ironmen, Pat Kraft, Jerry Caro coming over from NYX, Frank Altotomaso, formerly from Arsenal / Revo. So they got some new tools. They also lost Stephen O'Mara. I think the Pat Kraft, Stephen O'Mara trade, they fill similar roles on the field. Obviously, different players bring different things. I think that environment's going to be really good for Pat Kraft. Pat Kraft, to me, I've known him since he was a teenager, is a sponge. If there's a lot of confidence around him, he's going to feel confident. If there's a lot of doubt around him, he might lose it a little bit. He didn't have a great year last year. I expect him to have a much better one this year on the Ironman. Arsenal, for me, I will go out on a limb here. I think this team will definitely have a top 4 appearance this year. I would not be surprised in even I don't want to go on that big of a limb. Top 4 for sure. I would not be surprised if they win a tournament. The reason is because they have a really nice balance on their roster now. Last year, when I was coaching that team, we lost Stephen O'Mara, we lost Henry Sense, and we had kind of a vacuum of leadership on the player basis. And a lot of that ended up falling to Elliot Weaver because he was de facto our best player. Elliot doesn't really want to be the Mr. Captain rah rah rah. He wants to play paintball and collect Pokemon cards. Now the pickup of Cody Mikowski, who's a great leader, full accountability, super smart paintball player, lifts everyone up around him. He's a wonderful leader, and they get Stephen O'Mara back. Stephen O'Mara is a brilliant player, really unique skill set. He and Sean Saucedo, that's a really scary duo for any team. 2 wild cards on the field, but they're not just wild, they're really intelligent. They find your weak spot and they put their finger on it. Archie Barnes Jr. and Caleb Abel, that's a dynamic duo on the Snake side that can go head to head with anybody. Benny Carroll, talked to him a couple weeks ago. They've been practicing a lot this offseason. Arsenal says there's a great feeling on that group. To me, 8 guys is the right number. We had 10 guys last year. We never really had our starting line solidify. A lot of mistakes on the coaching level. And then the player level, we just never really connected fully on the field. In particular, in the late game moments, weren't able to connect when you need that 30-second or 40-second point, like we saw Heat Fit convert 2 of those in the World Cup final. So important. Without Stephen O'Mara, we failed almost every one of those situations last year. His return, I think Arsenal's a scary team. It's Tom Ford's 3rd year owning the team. I think he's finally hit the group. Chris Jansen, new coach, really familiar with Cody Mikowski, really familiar with Elliot Weaver, Midwest guy with a ton of experience, really smart. He was almost going to join our coaching staff last year. No doubt about him as head coach. And then you got Opie Logren, the ace in the hole, the paintball savant, Mr. Boulevard, who's really helped bring that coaching staff over the top.
Yeah, and there's just so many compelling stories this year. I can't wait to see what actually happens once we start shooting the paintball guns and anger at each other. I do agree with you about Arsenal, though. I had a chance to sit down with ABJ on a show recently, and he's just a really good dude. He's been working his ass off for years to give himself this opportunity. He had 10 teams hit him up, which we discussed, the difficulty of that type of a decision of that magnitude and where he decides to go and who he plays with. But, when he decided to choose Arsenal, I think it was a little shocking considering that some of the other teams that were giving him offers, where you could have gone to a team that had a little bit more pedigree recently. But this is a very creative team. It's a good mixture of creativity, experience, and power. So bringing in Archie Barnes in, who is a power player, and then also having Caleb Abel as options in the snake. I think that if they go 1-2 in the snake, I think that could be really scary. I love how Sean Saucedo plays. He's he's kind of in just him. He can play a power game, but he also can play a very creative game as well too. Love Benny Carroll. Love watching him play. He's very smooth. He's got one of the smoothest styles that I've ever seen in the game, which is he's fun to watch. But he's a really smart guy, and he's not scared to drop the hammer when need be, and he plays well in the scramble. So when I look at these, and then obviously Cody Mikowski and Stephen O'Mara are really amazing and thrive in the scramble too. Paintball teams win tournaments when you have incredibly high paintball IQ players that once the game plan is out the window, we're deep on Sunday and it's 3-on-3 and it's a penalty madness and all this craziness is set in. That's why we call it the scramble. Everything gets mixed up. How quickly do you identify those changing variables and then decide you be the proactive one and make the move, that wins that game, or react properly, take that attack, and then, turn it right back against your opponents. And I just think that Arsenal has the good, correct mix of players to potentially make a run this season. So it's going to be fun to watch them on that journey. With New York Extreme, man, this is going to be a tough one because, it is a mixture of guys from New York Extreme, John Peterson, Will Hennessy, they're bringing back Timmy Roberts, Josh Taylor, and you got Harris Hussein, and then you got Jackson Blue, Kaea, Acevedo, Cochran, guys from the ML Kings. So it's going to be a little bit of a mix-up in that situation as far as who are going to be their go-to guys, and so that's and again, when you're talking about the Ironman, I was talking to Shane Pestana, and he was saying that the guys are starting to get a decent bond together. Like, hey, this is our team too, and that's kind of one of those things they've gone through multiple rebuilds in a few years, and yeah, they did lose a very crucial body in Stephen O'Mara. But that team is definitely playing with the chip on their shoulder, and talking about picking up power players, they pick up Jerry Carl, and when Jerry's on fire, he's one of the best guys out there. And they still have the track star Brody Lewis. Brody's actually not going to be at the first event. They also have a pretty deep roster as well too. Kyle was really good for him last year. They were pretty inconsistent throughout the year, going as far up as that. They had that third place when we had to play 2 tournaments at one event in Atlantic City, and they took the third place, whereas we had to play, essentially the Sundays for Texas because of the weather on Thursday, and they took third, and then they go take last place. We're in the same physical location. Obviously the layout changed, but so they were just super inconsistent last year, but they also have a pretty good mix of some guys that, because Frank Antomaso has been around for a while. To get Garrett Baldwin back, Keith DeVitt. So yeah, I was a former Ironman myself. Hopefully, they can get it together this year and be a threat to win tournaments. And then Houston Heat, with a lot of change, the most amount of change they've had in years, picking up Jackson Frey, Cody LaPapa, and Soap. LaPapa looked really good already for him at the 4-way practice. So I'm looking, this could be a real big breakout year for LaPapa. He got on a lot of people's radar last season. I think this playing with the other experienced dudes and, help push Chad George to become, the player that he could be. It's been a couple seasons. Chad's been dealing with some injuries. But yeah, man, and then he was super consistent, but I talked to Ryan Smith at that event, and he was like, yeah, we were consistently mediocre because yeah, we'd win and get to Sunday, no problem. But then we couldn't figure out a way to win a game on Sunday. Just exactly what happened to him. If we could, let's get the layout up. If we could throw the layout up and move on, talk about the layout, and then talk about some of these crucial games as far as the schedule is concerned as we kick things off. What was your initial thoughts on the layout here, Mike?
The center is a slightly different look than we're used to seeing, with a lot of tall bunkers there. To me, that makes it pretty appealing for guys like Sean Saucedo come to mind to me immediately when I see that, because there's a lot of bunkers in short and little gap areas, the ability to get lost. A snake side where you can crawl all the way to the end without wire dominance. Wire dominance is irrelevant sort of on that field. So definitely looks offensive to me. One of the things I was kind of trying to look at when the layout comes out is what do I think the dig-in spots are going to be? What are going to be the spots that people want to take on Sunday? I think that first Dorito on the Dorito side is a bunker that's going to be really difficult to dig out. I think that first laydown on the snake side is going to be a spot that can hold people up when you're trying to hold the lead. Sunday ball, I expect a lot of 2 in the back center. Depends on how the lanes are. Those shots on the short Aztecs look pretty big to me. So it'll be interesting to see what people's survivability is getting out to the short spots over there. And kind of like when you need to get 5 bodies out alive, what does your breakout look like? To me, it's probably going to be something like 2 in the back center, 1 to one of those Aztecs, 1 out wide on either side, and then probably up to one of those center towers. Those center towers look pretty safe off the break. It'll also be interesting to see. It seems like you could probably get a little jiggy on the Dorito side up the center and then cross your way over into that 50 structure on the Dorito side. Just because of how tall those bunkers are, you don't have to make a move into a pin to get across over there. You can go from tower to wedge to can to across. Again, I just picture Sean Saucedo doing moves on stuff like this. It's very easy to imagine him starting on one place and ending up somewhere totally different. Yeah, it's always different once you play it. It always gets tight on Sunday, right? The risk reward kind of balance changes the deeper you go into the tournament. I expect on Friday a lot of deep runs, a lot of bloody knuckles paintball in both 50s. And then by Sunday, people really aren't trying to get up in your grill so quickly. They're kind of trying to get a kill and then choke you out. So it'll be interesting to see where those spots are on the field, but looks super fun.
Yeah, it does look pretty fun. Interesting with the, no real back corner on the D side, kind of tears out up from the Aztec into D1, D2, D3. Yeah, giant fortresses in the middle. And then a staggered snake, which was interesting because, we get it, at least one of these a year typically, but it's interesting we get it at the first event. We had a practice with one of the divisional teams that I coach out of Bakersfield called Alliance, and they had set up a field that had a snake that looked a lot like this. Middle was completely different. The D side was very different, but the snake was pretty much this type of snake. And I told him, I was like, well, this is one of those unconventional snakes, but we're going to have to learn how to play this one because you will see this occasionally throughout the year. And then event number 1, we get it, so it's obviously, the snake is the most important side of the field because it's the bunker set that runs the whole way. I am wondering how survivable it will be to run that side with that can and having having those doubled up back guns over there. And then having a tower where a guy, if he, can run and gun and put his gun towards that snake side. But yeah, very much interested to see, when fields are designed, we want them to be entertaining, obviously, to play, fun to play. But we also, when we're filming it, we're making a show around it. It's like if the points are so fast, there's no like story. It's just a huge car crash. That's a little different. But then if they're too slow, that's super frustrating as well too. I mean, with the way that the rules are, they're always going to find a way to have some 8-9 minute long points out there on Sunday occasionally. Don't think we're going to be able to get away from that unless we do tinker with some sort of format change. But yeah, I don't know. It looks, like you said, it looks fun, man. It is. It just always kind of reminds me. Alex Frazier is a funny guy to talk about layouts because he'll always joke. I'm like, hey, what do you think about the field layout? And he'll be like, yeah, you remember Malaga in Spain in 2005? It kind of reminds me. He's just being ridiculous. He does not actually look like that one, but he's like, I don't know. It's a paintball field, dude. We'll figure it out. And then other guys get super analytic about things. Yeah. I mean, Frazier was joking. He does get analytic about it as well, too. But yeah, it does look like a fun field to watch. So I'm pretty excited about that. So let's jump into this schedule here, Mike. Kind of going to that morning bracket on Friday. Was there anything let's start out with set number 1. Well, let me put it this way. As far as like on day 1, when you were looking at it, did anything pop out like, man, that's going to be a huge set that I really want to watch?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the Arsenal Dynasty game, just to start us off in the season, is super interesting to me. Both those teams with a lot of change. Really curious to see what they both have to bring on Friday morning, right when you jump into it. And then similarly, Impact Uprising, those first sets. I think the Impact Infamous game is the game I'm sort of more interested in, just to see I mean, there's a little bit. It's not bad blood, but Trevor Reeser playing his old team, Rob Velez playing his old team. Those two definitely stuck out for me the most. Um, what else in this? And then also Tauntaun FSU versus Paintball Fit. Oh, that's the afternoon bracket. You want to stay in the morning for now. That's right.
Yeah, well, yeah. So morning is so starting off. Also for everyone out there, we're starting out at 7:20 a.m. Going to be Eastern time, so pretty early if you're here on the West Coast. But obviously, it all gets archived on Major League Paintball Plus. But I'm really interested. Obviously, yeah, I think Dynasty with the changes they had and with Arsenal and changes, that's a big game for both those teams starting out right out the gate. But I'm really interested also with this Uprising Chicago Aftershock game, because Uprising was looking so dialed towards the end of the year, and now they've had a whole offseason with not a lot of change at all in the roster. So I think that, and then Shock has had a decent amount of change by picking up a ton of players. So, on paper, the fact that Uprising is basically going to have, essentially the same starting five, and they're going to be super confident coming into 2025 with how good they looked at the end of those last two events last season. And then, so Shock's going to have to figure out their starting five real quick, and they're going to have to perform right out the gate because they cannot sleep on Uprising. So I'm pretty stoked that that's going to be set one, day one, event one of the year. And then we get Leverage and Infamous. And I just really want to see what Leverage is going to look like against pro competition, so that's a fun one for me too. And then, Ironman Extreme, we're in the 8:20 a.m. bracket. It's every hour there'll be a lunch break. After the 12:50 set, or after the 11:20 set, there'll be a lunch break, and then we head into the afternoon. But just staying in the morning real quick. There's just knowing all these stories is so compelling, because with the Ironman and the changes that they've had, and then they're going to be playing New York Extreme in their first match, going to have to get it together with this mixture of Extreme and ML Kings. I don't know. This is and then Impact Uprising. And then I was looking at it because so Aftershock and Uprising, they did not play each other last year. And then Dynasty playing Revo, they only played each other once, and it was a 5-point win at World Cup. Infamous obviously hasn't played Leverage. The Ironman, they played against New York Extreme 3 times last year. And if you're counting the ML Kings as well too, and they went 3-1. So they did lose to the ML Kings 2-3.
Yeah, Harris and Henry Sense love to go at each other. That should be a fun one to watch. Some theatrics always from Harris Hussein on NYX. Henry Sense, no stranger to a little trash talk either. For the NYX, formerly ML Kings, at least they cannot do worse than they did as ML Kings in day one at Vegas last year when they failed to score a point. So hopefully they can not repeat that performance. I think that was kind of a pain issue for them. But it's gonna be tough sledding, I think, for NYX. But kind of playing out of that position, people will sleep on you sometimes, right? Like if the Ironmen get caught looking down the road at their next game, take NYX a little too lightly, and then you have a team that feels like no one respects them. They punch you in the mouth, go up a couple points, things get chaotic. Anybody can beat anybody out here, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then Impact and Uprising in that one at 9:20. They only played each other once last year, and it happened to be at World Cup, and it was on Sunday, and Impact knocked Uprising out in that super close match. Ended up being 3-2. So Impact does have a little bit, it's good because there's been so much change that a lot of these teams look a lot different. But it is nice to be coming off a win just a few months ago against a squad that's going to be looking relatively the same. And then Houston Heat, they played Arsenal/Revo twice last year and beat them both times. Heat was pretty good in the prelims last year. Obviously, again, Shock has not played Leverage. And then Dynasty and New York Extreme played each other quite a bit in the beginning or in the middle of the season. Played at the Lone Star. Dynasty won 5-1. And then they played again in Atlantic City, and Dynasty won that one with a shutout 5-0 victory. So.
Yeah, Dynasty, I think, is going to come out with a chip on their shoulder, which they haven't really had a good excuse to have a chip on their shoulder in a while. And it'll be interesting to see how they respond to it. I mean, I don't want to count NYX out, but that's a tough looking matchup there. Day one dynasty, especially if they lose to Arsenal. If they lose to Arsenal and dynasty sitting at 0-1, that becomes a very important game to them.
Oh, for sure. But kind of stacked up nicely for them, though, because if they do drop to Arsenal and then they're playing New York Extreme, again, people like, oh, Extreme got relegated last year, but again, it's a mixture of the ML Kings. So essentially, they bought the spot from the ML Kings and then named it New York Extreme again. But that's kind of good scenario for them, though, because we just don't know how good Extreme's going to be right out the gate with that mixture again of the ML Kings and some guys that played with New York Extreme. Impact played Infamous, Mike, 3 times last year, and they were 3-0. They played him in AC twice, beat him 4-1 and 6-0, and then they beat him at the World Cup 4-3. And then Heat did not play the Ironman last year.
That's interesting. I think the Impact Infamous thing kind of speaks to a strength and a weakness that don't line up. Infamous really did well last year when they could play the slow game and play the control game. They had difficulty when they had to close teams out. Impact is a really difficult team to close out, and they love playing the control game. So if you're having trouble with your closes and you're going against an Impact team that really knows how to pull out those down body situations, knows how to dig in and communicate and make things very difficult for you, I'm not surprised that that was the record last year. Heat will be really interesting this year. I think like Soap is a great pickup considering that retired, because I think Soap and have similar skill sets. Obviously, Soap's a younger guy.
Yeah.
You were talking up LaPapa before. Those were the 3 best guys for me from last camp for sure. Those were the guys I had highlighted on my scouting report. LaPapa is a guy who really likes to go forward, and I think Heat likes that. I think Chad George having a guy in front of him that he can joystick and send into danger and without fear and then clean up behind him is kind of the ideal situation for Chad at this point in his career, where it's tough at that age. I mean, Billy Bernacchi is one of the only guys in that age bracket who's still grinding as the 1, never plays the 2.
No, that's a good point. Soap does slot in nicely in a position where, could play. It just, that with the 3 new guys, they're just going to have to kind of figure out, as all of these, as we keep talking about, just because it's true, is that who are going to be their go-to guys this year for Houston Heat. I mean, Houston Heat decided to, instead of pick up some superstars and have to pay them a ton of money, at least for paintball, they went with some guys that are looking to prove themselves, that play a ton of paintball and that want to get after it and kind of form a new core of Houston Heat. Let's head into the afternoon bracket here. So Damage only played Aftermath once. It was at the World Cup, and Damage took that victory 5-2. And then Fit did not play the Hurricanes last year. Is anything poking out for you as far as I mean, again, these are all going to be, you never know where the good games are going to come out of sometimes, but we could sit about here and talk, well, on paper, this team should match up with this team. And then all of a sudden you'll see a barn burner and you just never know.
So Damage, I didn't speak on them when we were going through the brackets, but I really loved the pickups they made. I thought they picked up guys who fit into their team identity really well. In CJ Cantor, who's a guy who knows how to get after it when the moment calls for it, but also knows how to play really smart paintball. Carter Donaldson, formerly of the ML Kings, played at fields near them. I'm sure they've been familiar with Donaldson for years. He's got that paintball size, small guy who has a chip on his shoulder. We practiced the ML Kings quite a bit last year. I was always impressed by Donaldson. I think he'll really thrive in that program. Chris Shear, who can slot in for them on the Dorito side. Damage last year just had trouble with depth. They had their injuries at World Cup that really derailed their chances there. It's their home field event. They have 12 guys rostered. Joey Blute, he ran 2 lines at that blind layout minor a few years ago. I'd be curious to see how Blute manages 12 guys on the roster. Wouldn't be shocked to see him go with 2 lines. Also wouldn't be shocked to see him play his tried and true vets and have the new guys watch for the first couple tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Fit coming off that World Cup win and how good Legion was last year and Impact's pickups. I mean, there's just been all this there's been so much change. Damage was a big part of that too. You discussed some of their new pickups, and then the pickup of Kevin Brettauer. But man, I really think that Damage not only has a chance to be incredibly consistent this year. They won a tournament last year, going undefeated at the 4th event. But I mean, I think it. If you're not looking at that roster and how good they already were, and they obviously got better. So yeah, it always comes down to execution. Yeah, they have an army. They're bringing, like you said, 12 to this event, including owner CJ Botsalis, who was a hell of a player back in the day too. He's super busy running his company, but doesn't get to make it to all the events. But they are super deep. Love the new pickups. Everyone should be super fresh, because that one of the, like you said, problems with depth last year because of those injuries. So Joey Blute and Kevin Brettauer are going to have just more bodies out there to keep those guys fresh. And I really think that Tampa Bay Damage wins the tournament in 2025. With, again, how good Legion's going to be. Obviously, Fit's going to put Fit in that conversation. X Factor with the 2 finals appearances. And of course, Edmonton Impact, Shock, Dynasty Heat, we'll see. Diesel, obviously in a running potentially for a win too, with how well they played at Cup before the wheels came off. It's going to be crazy this year. But looking at and then also I want to see how are the Sea Dogs going to look? They got to start out against Diesel. I think that's kind of going to be a rough first game. Because Diesel's hungry for it, man.
Yeah.
I talked to the dudes. I got a ride actually from the airport. I was with Spica and Jesse Stevens. Jesse Stevens was driving, and these guys are pumped, man. They're very, very excited for this season. So yeah, I think that's kind of going to be potentially a harsh introduction to the league for the Sea Dogs. And then with the Energy Elite having to play Tauntauns too. So the first time we're going to see those 2 squads will be in a potentially bloody game as well.
Yeah, I think Diesel, they were at the practice at Tiki's that Revo was at right before World Cup last year. There was a good feeling around that team. They were super locked in. Mouse seemed super motivated. Kyle Spica is a great teacher over there. They were really putting in the extra work. Monday, I went there with a couple guys from my team for some extra drills, and they had almost their whole team out there. I think those guys are really hungry. I think the way World Cup shook out for them, they're going to come out here with a vengeance this first tournament. Anything can happen out here, but they're going to be motivated. Fit, I actually don't expect them to be trapped or really overconfident or resting on their laurels. I talked to Colt Lukow. He's going to have a piece in Gap issue 3 as well. That guy is just the real deal, man. He just gets it. And you can hear when he talks to you about how he treats his team and the type of leader he is. He's not pretending. He just kind of understands what it takes to be a leader on a squad. He says the right thing, and I think he does the right thing too. If you go back and watch those Fit games from World Cup, and you see the moments they had in that pit, he's never phased. He beats Malloy in a one-on-one in a critical moment in that Red Legion game. Kind of barely celebrates, you can tell he's jacked. You can tell he's soaking in the moment, but never too high, never too low. That's the thing we said on Revo last year. It's a thing Kobe Bryant really preached a lot. And I think Colt Lukow embodies that all the time. And that's the reason why they ended up in that Fit Diesel game of not making the mistakes and kind of reaping the benefits from that overshooting fest that spilled into chaos.
Yeah, very calm in the chaos. And Fit, with being the world champs, are they going to, get even better this year? I mean, it would make sense that they would, with all that momentum with the World Cup victory, going undefeated on that miraculous Sunday that they had. Definitely one of the big stories that we want to see this year. I mean, how good is Fit going to get? They did pick up they picked up a divisional player. I think who was it? I just was talking to, I got a lot of notes in front of me right now. Let me find it real quick. Yeah, they picked up Jacob Seabaugh.
Right.
Yeah, who was playing with Leverage last year. That was it. So, yeah, so let's head into, before I let you go, let's look at Sunday. Or sorry, Saturday. We don't know who's going to make Sunday. We can't look at Sunday yet.
The game I have circled on Saturday, not to jump ahead too much, but Baltimore Arsenal versus Los Angeles Ironman, Stephen O'Mara versus Henry Sense. Those guys have been teammates since they were children, basically. It'll be the first time they're showing down. Both teams, you don't know what their situation is going to be, but it's the fourth game in the prelims. So one of them is probably going to be either looking to secure a bye or trying to make Sunday, the potential to knock the other one out. That's going to be a high intensity game. Frank Tomaso also going from Arsenal last year to the Ironmen. I That's one that I have circled. That one's going to be fun to watch. Certainly my game that I have circled for the prelims in pro. I can't. I just got to let my bias show because it's real. But that's going to be a fun one to watch.
I mean, I don't obviously if I had a dog in this fight, it would be for the Ironman because I played for the team for 5.5 years. But I also circled that one too because knowing that story, knowing the fact that Henry Sense and O'Mara had played together for so long, and O'Mara decided to leave the Ironman and go to, Arsenal, aka used to be Revo. So yeah, there's this. I don't know how much bad blood's there. It's that I also circled that one too, just because there's a lot of story in that one.
Yeah,
I'm also
Stephen
really interested
O'Mara
to
was.
see. Go ahead.
Sorry, real quick. Stephen O'Mara was the best man at Henry's wedding. He didn't end up making the speech. I can't remember why, but the best man. They played together their whole lives, and now they're going to be opponents for truly the first time. That's going to be exciting. Yeah, there's going to be exchanges in that. There's going to be the chirping. I think paintball is in a very fun era right now. I don't love malicious intent. Some of the shenanigans are a little too much for my delicate sensibility. But I like the way guys are getting after each other right now. They're trying to push each other's buttons. The way guys talk trash to each other. Sometimes maybe it steps over the line, but it's good to keep it spicy.
Well, as someone that came up in the era of malicious intent, and I do not have delicate sensibilities, yeah, I want to see some madness out there. If I'm gonna let let the truth be known, so that's what I actually think about it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's just fun, man. I mean, paintball definitely that's one of the in the way the world is, you really get to unleash the beast, and I just think letting these guys play a little bit. I mean, it's supposed to be the best players in the world. Let's let them off the leash a little bit and let them get after it and see who's the best. If they're gonna overshoot each other, then the enforcers will figure it out. So yeah, I mean, World Cup was everything I was hoping it was going to be with how things shook out. So, but yeah, and then the Chicago Aftershock Infamous game. Again, now we're heading into Saturday, so Sunday implications. Obviously, you only get 4 games to work with in the prelims. They're all important, but as Saturday starts to tick down, you start to watch these battles go down. See where everyone's kind of sitting. If you have a rough day, you need to win both to have any chance, because typically you need to go right around 2-2 and have some sort of positive point spread to have a real good chance to make it to that top 10 and go to where the real tournament starts, which is on Sunday. But the Chicago Aftershock Infamous game, definitely looking forward to seeing that one. They only played each other once last year, and it was a 5-2 victory in Chicago for Chicago Aftershock. And then the longest, and then also in that same set, you have Dynasty taking on the Ironman again. Saturday morning, so could be a crucial game, could be already a must-win situation for one of these two squads. And the Dynasty Ironman rivalry is on paper the longest running rivalry in all of pro paintball. The Ironman's the longest running pro team, going all the way back to the late 80s. And then Dynasty came up. They called themselves the Iron Kids. That movie should be dropping here pretty soon as well, too, for a reason. And that's because the Ironmen were the best team in the world when they came up, and definitely the best team in California. And so they kind of emulated and then kind of took over. And obviously there's just a lot of story there. So I'm always love me a good San Diego Dynasty LA Ironman game, especially on a Saturday when it could count.
Yeah, that last set too on Saturday is juicy. Red Legion versus Damage, X Factor versus Paintball Fit. If all those teams end up in that bracket and they're all sitting at 3-0, it becomes less interesting, but still exciting. I mean, you still want that bye going into Sunday. It makes a huge difference. Not having to play in the Ocho round, right? Playing the lowest remaining seed. Maybe you get one of those teams that snuck through on a wild card after playing 2 soft teams versus a team that's hot and been scraping out of a bracket of death. Yeah, I'm very curious to see. Red Legion is an interesting team because they tried to make some moves this offseason, but kind of the one pickup that landed, Mikey Urena, ended up reneging on them. So they're kind of in the situation of still rolling with that starting 5, and then they got the American kids hanging around who gets some spins now and then, but it's really going to be that starting five. It's an excellent starting five, but yeah, it's a tough ask to win with just five guys the whole weekend long. At the same time, you look at Paintball Fit; they weren't going to their bench really at all at World Cup. So there's something to be said too about having the same five guys out there all the time.
Yeah, they made a couple. Like they sat Cyrus and in a crucial moment. We broke it all down. We did a really long show with brought on like almost the entire team and discussed things like kind of blow for blow, moment for moment through all of Sunday. And they had a lot of interesting things to say. It was a good show. They're entertaining for sure. They definitely don't keep their cards close to their chest on what they think about things. So that's kind of cool. I also like the 11-20 set because so it's going to be the last game for both Impact and Shock, and so that could have big time Sunday implications potentially. And they played each other only once last year, twice last year, and they went 1-1. Impact won the first one in Vegas 5-3. That was a rough event for Shock. That was the first event they were all together. And then they played in the next one, the Lone Star, and Shock won that one 4-1. So last year, 2024, they were 1-1, and now they're going to play each other in their last game in the prelims. And then also Houston Heat has to play San Diego Dynasty for their last game in the prelims. So I think that 11-20 set, that could be a really fun one to watch for sure too.
Yeah, A-Rod's always dangerous, but on a field like this where there's all these bunkers in the middle of the field where he can play on his feet, this is a real A-Rod layout. I think A-Rod, like Stephen O'Mara, is a guy where if you're not keeping pressure on him, he has no problem coming to your side of the field and eating your guys' lunch while you're sleeping, worried about the wide guys. Tall bunkers playing on your feet in the center, it can be a scary thing because you're going to catch some blind to your back. It's a guarantee if you're going up into the furnace. That's officially what I'm going to call that center structure now, the furnace. Yeah, I can't wait to see A-Rod and some of those guys get after that on this layout. Matty, I'm curious, a matchup that's not in the prelims, but one that I do hope we get to see at this tournament. I would love to see a Dynasty Impact. I was sort of thinking about like what would you consider the biggest bad blood matchups that we could have at this tournament, and a Diesel Fit rematch, of course, comes to mind. Marcelo reunion with Dynasty certainly comes to mind. We're guaranteed to see the Ironman Arsenal showdown, which I can't wait for. But I'm wondering if I'm missing any bad blood matchups that you'd like to see.
Those were definitely the ones on the tip of my tongue too. Tauntauns versus Heat.
Yeah,
because Fedorov versus the team he's been on for a decade plus. That would be a good one.
Dynasty Hurricanes. You're gonna get a really motivated Hurricanes team. I bet on that.
Yeah, for sure. Would like to see. I mean, it's a little bit older now, but Aftershock versus Ironman, because that's also a legendary, historic paintball rivalry. And also, the last time the Ironman won a tournament was in 2020, right before the COVID break. And all the dudes that won that tournament, almost not all of them, but a lot of them are currently on Chicago Aftershock. So that would be a fun one to watch. And
the other one that comes to mind,
I would love to. Yeah, go for it.
Is Impact Diesel, because you got the reneging of Mouse over there. We might get a Rainy Stanzek Mouse, another headbutt situation, perhaps. Not that I'm condoning violence. You know me, I would never do such a thing. I definitely didn't grow up playing 15 balls per second. I didn't grow up playing 15 balls a second either. I was already grown when we started doing that. It was actually more like 25 balls a second for a little bit. Those would be juicy. I'd love to see every single one of those. Wouldn't mind if there was a couple headbutts, but yeah, I think those are the big ones that I can think of. I would like to see Infamous play Diesel again, because that match got very bonus bally towards the end. So that would be kind of cool. Those are the big ones. And then where was the other set that I was looking forward to? I want to see Damage play Diesel at 150 on Saturday. And I do agree that closing set, the last set of the prelims with Red Legion versus Tampa Bay Damage and X Factor versus PB Fit, that's going to be a good one too. Because go to my notes real quick.
Red Legion and Damage played each other twice last year, and Legion won both of those. And they knocked Damage out of the quarterfinals in Atlantic City with a Mercy Rule win, 7-1. And then X Factor and Fit played each other twice last year, and X Factor won both of those matches. So
the big brothers in Texas, X Factor.
But the last time they played each other was in Atlantic City. So the last time that Legion and Damage and X Factor and Fit played each other was in Atlantic City last year. So it's been a bit. But yeah, the prelims are definitely shaping up. I'm just, anytime we have the offseason is always crazy, but this one was particularly crazy. And so, yeah, the first event and the last, I mean, all the events are cool, but the first event is always a special one, particularly when there's so much change. And since there was so much change and there's all these compelling stories that we've been talking about, can't wait to kind of see how everyone looks as we get the season kicked off. Do you have a pick to win the tournament? Just one team? This is a tough one.
Yeah, pick to win the tournament. I'm going to go Impact. It's a boring pick, but I think that team is super deep. I just think that Rainey Stanzek and Marcelo Margot, those guys really know how to win tournaments. I think those guys are kind of at the top of their game right now. They have history together. There's always the chance that there's fractures, but that team is just so deep. You have a coach in Dave Baines who's so used to dealing with, really talented all alpha situations. Bart Yakimek, great owner. I think Impact is just, a lot of things have changed for a lot of teams, but Impact is used to that. They've had turnover and all those things, and they've performed. Obviously didn't win an event last year, but that's a franchise that really kind of tends to come out of the gate pretty strong. So I'm going to go with Impact. What about you?
Yeah, I was going to say, how Mike really going out on a limb there, picking Impact, but since it's their first event together, that is kind of going out on a limb. Kind of almost, I mean, we can't wait to see who has the best paint there. That's always kind of a pretty good insight. Like, it's because making paint is an art, and at one event, sometimes it'll be this company has the best paint, and then the next event it's this company, and then it's this company. So I don't know. X Factor looked really good. We were playing around with formats at that Dallas practice, so it's not like a really true test of, they weren't, we didn't play any paintball that was the standard format through 2 days, but they looked really good. And talking to them, they were very happy to be there, super hungry, wanted to get after it, down for the grind. So it wouldn't surprise me if X Factor won the tournament. I also the last question I think I was going to throw at you, I got a couple names. I know who you're going to say, but if we just take any team from tier 4 or tier 5 that surprises people, pick one team, who do you think it's going to be?
Oh, Arsenal. Yeah, easy. Yeah. That team, we slid off at the end of last year, right? Obviously didn't perform well, but that's a really talented team that has everything you need from top to bottom. You got an owner that's supporting them, so they're going to get great practice. They got all the weapons you need. They got the leaders now. They got the guns off the break. I would not be shocked at all if Arsenal top fours or finds themselves on the finals field at this tournament. And the only other team in that bracket that I really could see top 4 would be Tauntauns, because they have a ton of experience there. They have a ton of weapons. Obviously, they've had some change, but I think that team, Axel, on a snake like this, where he's going to be able to play with the cat and mouse game, is what you have on these staggered snakes, and Axel thrives at that. He's nasty, snap shooting from his elbow. He's fast. He'll come launching at you when you least expect it. Would not be surprised to see the Tauntauns do very well either. Uprising has been on the uptick, but I would definitely put it with Arsenal or Tauntauns to come out tier 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think Uprising has a chance to go deep. I don't know if they're ready to win a tournament yet, but I just, considering that they kept their starting lineup essentially together, they're really hungry. They had a great end of last year. I think that they got a decent chance to not be in tier 4 come the second event. But yeah, I think the Tauntauns also, I don't really see them being in tier 5. I think that's a pretty safe bet. And then I'm interested to see this new lineup from Aftermath, because that's not local. It's not like it's down the street, but ASG is about an hour and 10 minutes from my house. but they play a lot of paintball, and they're real hungry, and they're going to one line. So I think that they got a decent chance to do well. They are in a tough bracket though. So yeah, man, it's gonna be a fun event. I can't wait. So guys, make sure you mark your calendars. March 7th through the 9th. First event is going down in Tampa. Mike, thank you so much for giving me some of your expert analysis. Make sure also to check out the new issue of Great American Paintball, dropping sometime in the next couple months. You were saying? Tough to tell when the ship date is.
Soon, wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't
and again,
know exactly
support
when that
those
ship date's
projects.
gonna be.
Yeah, just this is my constant plea to support paintball projects, because if Great American Paintball, if you really like it, it's not going to stick around forever unless you subscribe and put your money towards things that you really enjoy. So please help out the sport by helping out with the return of print, and help us out too, man. Please watch the show. We're trying to do the best we can with what we have here at Major League Paintball Plus, and we need your support to do that. So make sure to tune in again, March 7th through the 9th. First event of the season is going down. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one, bro. I can't wait to see what happens. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in just about a week. Man, it's coming up quick.
Rumor has it, I'm a savage. Drop the classic, thinking back. Drop the classic, too established. That the magic, it's all the magic. Got a mask, who was that? Living legend, lethal weapon, mastermind, never tired.
Big dreams, I got big dreams since like baby. I've been joining forces with the likes of an A-team. Jumping off of buildings used to be so stimulating. Now I'm reaching new heights, I'ma need the off-whites. Play with the fire, you get burned. All of my struggles became lessons well learned. I got desires that keep me grounded, that's for sure. Cause one day we gon' make it out this earth, where's your worth?
I'm sick of your talking, you got the wrong one. I'm taking your king and I leave him broken. If I am in second, it's after no one. Just give me a second to let him know. I'm the headline, the deadline. Big time. I'm ahead time, the rare kind. Big time. I'm a living legend, lethal weapon, master. Big time. The king is back like prodigal. I've been gone. I gave him time, it's been too long. Was silent calm, but now the storm. I'm not the one you can't ignore. I never lied.